Namaste to Jankiji, namaste to everybody. Let me start with a chant. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. With Jankiji's permission, I will introduce her and today's subject and then invite her to speak about it. I noticed that we are, thanks to the wonders of modern technology, we are all here together on this virtual platform, but we are from across the world. I'm in the East Coast here in New York, in the United States, and Jankiji is on the Pacific Coast. There are lots of people from all over India, but also from Canada and different parts of the United States. I saw people signing in from Belgium, countries across the world. It's wonderful to have all of you here. I won't say this morning or afternoon, it's all across all time zones across the whole world. Vedanta, we're going to speak in general about Vedanta, and Jankiji is going to tell us more about her new book, which I think is very significant, and I'll tell you in a moment why. The new book, Happiness Guarantee. You see, when we come to Vedanta, the objections sometimes are, the questions which are raised are that is this practical in day-to-day life, or is this only meant for some philosophers, or is this only meant for some monks sitting in the Himalayas or in the ashrams, or is it, even if it is practical, maybe it's only so in the sense of, getting moksha and liberation from the cycle of birth and death, only in the sense of ultimate things. But what about day-to-day life? Is it practical in terms of the problems of relationships, the wisdom that is contained in the Vedanta texts? Can it be applied in the problems of relationships, in the problems of your workplace, in family context, in our own internal issues of anxiety and fear and lack of fulfillment, frustration? So these are some of the questions. Swami Vivekananda, he famously said, the religion which cannot hold a morsel of food to the mouth of a hungry man, the religion which cannot wipe the tears of a widow, and yet promises heaven after death, I do not care for such a religion. He further went on to say that religion should be able to, spirituality should be able to help us whoever we are, wherever we are. At that level, it should be able to come down and help us to make our lives better. He said, Vivekananda also said that my mission in life can be put in a few words. It is to teach unto humanity their inner divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life. So this crucial phase, every movement of life. I have seen this in Jankiji's classes and also crucially in this new book, that how she makes Vedanta, the ancient timeless wisdom of Vedanta, eminently relatable and practical right now for anybody who's interested, anybody who's willing to take it seriously. See, there have been efforts to do this. Sometimes we hear of, for example, Vedanta for management and all. Sometimes it comes at the expense of diluting the core purpose or the higher goal of Vedanta, which is self-knowledge and spiritual liberation. Sometimes it becomes, what can Vedanta do to improve the bottom line of the company? So that, useful as it may be, is not our purpose today. Our purpose is no less than what was the purpose in the Upanishads, in the Gita, or the purpose of great masters like Vivekananda and others. Same purpose we have, spiritual liberation and freedom, but also how it can benefit us every step of the way. Let me just read out a little bit the formal introduction. Dr. Janki Santoke, she has a doctorate in philosophy. She is a lecturer, author, management trainer, and a public speaker. In 1988, she joined Swami Parthasarathi's Vedanta Academy for a 3-year full-time residential course in Vedanta. And ever since, she has been a full-time researcher and a propagator of Vedanta. She is the managing trustee of the Vedanta Wisdom Trust. And crucially, she is leading the trust's effort to establish the world's first Vedanta university. She is already a published author. Before the book which we are going to talk about, she's already written a book on Vedantic epistemology. That is, how do you know what you know? Which is urging us to think because our lives depend on it. It's available on Amazon. And specifically, the subject that we are going to talk about today, her new book, The Happiness Guarantee. The first volume is The Philosophy of Happiness, which has already been published. So she will speak about that. I mean, it's going to be a book talk about this book, The Happiness Guarantee, but more than a book talk, it's going to be about Vedanta in our lives. She gives public lectures, very well attended and highly appreciated public lectures on practical Vedantic topics, residential courses, regular classes, including online classes. You can catch up with her classes on YouTube. As we heard in the video, she writes for prominent newspapers like Times of India and the Speaking Tree section and so on. And she has, of course, been conducting management trainee programs for a number of eminent corporate bodies. Her logical and engaging sessions bring home the relevance of the ancient words to today's world. Her approachable style encourages questions and discussions. Jankiji, namaste and welcome. And please take over. Please take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. Yes, a big thing about Vedanta is how we can make it our everyday companion, every moment companion. As my guru liked to say, spiritual life is 24 hours, 365 days of the year. This is not a part-time hobby. It is something that is with us at all times. So let's see how we can approach the subject from the perspective of happiness today. Happiness, because it's a universal need. Every single person, wherever they are, every single being, whatever it is only in the pursuit of happiness. Everything that we move towards and everything that we move away from is only for that one thing. And since we're doing everything for it, it behoves us well to stop for a moment and think. As a Vedantin, you know that that's our main job in life, to just stop and think. It's not a rat race. It's not even a race. And we are not even rats. So nothing to do with running around. Many years ago, they used to say, don't just stand there, do something. Vedanta's perspective is, don't just do something, stand there. Just stop and think a little. So let's examine happiness. Oh, is the audio not clear? Is it too soft? It's good? Okay, thank you. If there's a problem, please let me know. Because I'm very used to hearing after a talk, oh, you speak so well. Only problem is I couldn't hear anything. So please let us avoid that today at least. So happiness is this universal need for all of us at all times, and we are now going to start thinking about it. What is it for? How do we get it? Since it's a universal need, we are going to think about it today. We are all the time running towards something or running away from something in this pursuit of pleasure. or happiness or satisfaction or fulfillment. A man lights up a cigarette, and especially if it's after a flight, you should see the expression on his face. It's like Trupti. He is so delighted with it. He's so satisfied. His agitations are so calmed. The person standing next to him is repulsed by that. He can't wait to run away. The cigarette being the same is pleasure for one and pain for another. A girl being the same is a blessing for her mother and a bane for her mother-in-law. The individual being the same causes pain for one and pleasure for another. And yet, think about this. We are all running behind something in the hope of gaining pleasure. That means we believe, excuse me, we believe that should I get that object, I will gain pleasure. Whatever it is, object being whatever, that's our belief. Today we're going to examine this. Does any object have pleasure inherent in it? Does it have this? Sugar is sweet, right? Sugar is sweet. Any one of us today, putting sugar on our tongue will experience the sweetness. So we can say that the cause of the sweetness was the sugar, correct? Everybody experiencing it will find sugar sweet. So the cause of the sweetness was the sugar. Fire is hot. Anyone going anywhere near it will find that heat. Right? So you can say the cause of the heat is the fire. But the cigarette gives pain to one and pleasure to the other. Therefore, it cannot be the cause of either the pain or the pleasure, because everybody does not experience this. Then how does this happen? What is this mechanism? How is it? You all know that you have contacted things and those things have given you pleasure, and then you have contacted some other things and they've given you pain. When someone's nagging at you, that's painful. When your spouse tells you all the things that are wrong about you, that's a fact of life, but it's a painful one. When you receive accolades and praise, you feel happy. We are contacting these objects and deriving the sorrow and the joy out of it. And yet we must understand that there is no sorrow or joy in those things. We find it difficult to understand that. How is it possible? I ate the chocolate, I loved it, I felt so happy. I ate the ice cream, I felt so happy. How is that possible that it does not have the joy? I saw somebody doing some horrible act and it was horrible, horrible. I couldn't bear it. How can you say that it had no displeasure? How can you say that? Okay, let's take an example. It's a Purnima night, full moon, the bright moon. You are enjoying a walk with your beloved in that moonlight. You are experiencing the moonlight, especially if it's Kojagri Purnima or some such thing. You're enjoying the moonlight, and yet you know for certain that there is no such thing as moonlight. The moon is dark. You are seeing the sun rise. You are seeing the sun set. And yet there is no such thing. The sun is stationary, it's we who are moving. So just because it's my experience it is so is not correct. I have to examine it. So let's examine it quickly together. How do I gain pleasure out of anything? I have a desire for a mango. I eat the mango. I experience pleasure. I say that the mango has caused me pleasure. But think about this. If it was my 10th mango, would it cause me pleasure? No way, right? So how come the first mango caused me pleasure? Think of the mechanism that is taking place. I have a desire for a mango. The desire agitates my mind. When my mind is agitated, I take the mango, the agitations of my mind come down. I experience what I call pleasure, happiness. Right? I have a desire, I obtain the object of my desire, and my agitations come down. I call this drop in agitations my happiness. Every single time I have experienced happiness, it is because of this. I may have a desire for Vedanta. I study Vedanta. I experience happiness. I do not have a desire for Vedanta. I study Vedanta and I think it's the world's most boring subject. Which we've all experienced, right? You told all your friends, you must come and listen to Vedanta. And they came and they say, hey Bhagwan, what do you like in this? We have no explanation to them what we like. And they cannot explain to us what they don't like. It's a mystery to both parties. Now, think about this. When there is a desire is fulfilled, I experience happiness. I had a desire for a mango, I had the mango, I experienced happiness. Now it's my 10th mango. I no longer have a desire. I am being forced to eat it. I will not experience my happiness from the same mango. I'm sure Swamiji must have experienced this. Swami Chinmayananda used to say that never tell your students what you like. It's the worst thing, because if you claim you like a mango, you will have mango for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and everything in between. So by the time you've come to your 10th mango, you're like, hey, Bhagwan. So how does the happiness come? The desire is fulfilled, the agitations drop. So happiness comes out of fulfillment of desire. It comes out of absence of desire. The desire is no more, and therefore are we happy. I had a desire for a mango. I ate the mango. The desire is gone. Therefore, I am happy. So all happiness comes because of absence of desire. Right now in this classroom, if you suddenly get some desire in your head, oh, I wish I met Swami Sarvapriyananda, I'll be so happy if I meet him, the agitations will cause lack of peace. Peace will go away. So, all happiness is the result of absence of desire. With me so far? Yes? Okay, great. Now, how do you remove desire? You have two ways. You can remove a desire by fulfilling it, or you can remove a desire by sublimating it. Fulfillment of desire is very easy, and we all love to do this. I have a desire for mango, eat a mango. I have a desire for ice cream, eat an ice cream. I have a desire for get married. All this thing. Whatever that my desire is, I am going all out and trying to fulfill these things in the hope and the pursuit of pleasure. Nothing wrong with that. Except you will notice that every time you fulfill a desire, 20 more arrive on the scene. So therefore, you can look back on your life and say, I have achieved so much. I wanted so many things. I got them all. But I'm still in exactly the same position, sometimes even worse. If you think about school, all you wanted was the good marks in 10th standard. And then all you wanted was the admission into college. And then all you wanted was the good job. Then all you wanted was to get married. And then to have a child. And you felt at every stage that if I get this, everything's going to be fine. Well, you found out. The wise person is one who finds out before you do all this. So what have we learned today? All happiness comes from absence of desire. Desire can be removed by two ways. One is what we always do, run behind the objects and try to get them and find the happiness, but that's elusive happiness. And the second way is through spiritual growth. When you take up to higher values in life, the lower ones, the importance for the lower wanes away. Just as when you took up, we all loved toys at one point. But when we became teenagers, what happened to that love of toys? Just disappeared. Why? Because you took on teenage values, so the values of childhood disappeared. Then we were all carried away with the values of teenage, getting a new bike maybe, or, getting a girlfriend, something like that. And we outgrew them when we became adults. Well, at least most of us did that. Then we wanted adult toys and joys, name and fame and fortune. So how do you sublimate a desire? By gaining a higher desire. When you do this with your body, it means you serve a higher cause. It's called karma yoga. When you do this with your mind, that means you create love for the higher, for God. It is called bhakti yoga. And when you do this with your discrimination, with your intellect, it is called jnana yoga, where you discriminate, you reason, you judge. Not every single thing about the world, but beyond this world and something beyond this world. Beyond the fleeting in this world and the permanent in this world. You can think beyond the fleeting. When you do this, the mind elevates itself to higher values. The lower desires drop, and we experience the joys of spirituality. The joys of being a human being. Nothing spectacular. We are heir to this. This is us. This is our life. It is not an animal's life. Our life is meant for this. And when we do it, as Swamiji said, we become extremely productive in action. Our relationships become fantastic, very fulfilling. And our intellect is able to soar much higher. We can conceive things beyond what other people can conceive, and therefore do such amazing things. So coming back to what we started with. What did we start with? Happiness is universal need. We believe we get it by chasing objects. This is not true and not possible, because the happiness or the sorrow doesn't lie in the object. That is not a cause and effect relationship. So what is the cause and effect relationship? When a desire is absent, happiness arises. You've all experienced this. How do we get the state of absence of desire? Either through fulfillment. See, Vedanta is not against fulfillment. It is not that we are saying don't get married, don't have a job, don't have children. Nobody's saying don't fulfill your desires. What it is saying is that is a weak reed to depend upon. You depend not on that. You depend on the higher. And these lower things, they have to be done and they will be done, and please go ahead and do them. If you do this both, you will find the fulfillment because you figured out where is that cause and effect relationship. To fulfill the desire, Vedanta teaches you how. To sublimate the desire, Vedanta teaches you how. How on earth can you not want to study Vedanta? It's the single most important thing we can do. Okay, so that's it from me. Back to you, Swamiji.
Thank you so much, Jankiji. That was wonderfully done. I know from personal experience how difficult it is. It's easy to give a 1 hour talk, but it's much more difficult to pack it into 20 minutes. So thank you for that. I uh, to all the people who are here, we have a very large online audience here, um, nearly 400 people. Those who want to ask questions, you can type them in the chat box, and I'll take up a few to put to Janki ji at the end of it. But I'll use my privilege as the interlocutor to ask questions first. Now, I had some questions for Janki ji based on her book, The Happiness Guarantee, which, by the way, uh, I urge all of you, you can get it off Amazon easily. So, by going through that book, I had some questions. I think Janki ji has really covered the first one very well. Uh, but still, I'll put it to her if she wants to add something there. The first question was, you know, we all chase happiness. And that's the primary motivator for, I think, all living beings, especially human beings. And the interesting thing is that we make a mess of it. We fail. Uh, that's what the question was, that we achieve so many things in life. We set out to do things in life and we achieve our goals, big and small. But the fundamental underlying motive, the underlying goal of attaining happiness, why do we fail? I know you have just gone over this, but would you like to summarize or add something new? Why do we fail to be happy?
Because we do not look at the cause and effect relationship. And because we don't look at the cause and effect relationship, we put the accent on the wrong syllable. Life for a human being is not as it is for an animal. An animal's life is perfect. It eats, it's born, it grows, it eats, it mates, it dies, it has territory. It's a perfect life for the animal. Why are humans living like this? That's not our life. So we're living a false life. We're living a false life. How do you expect to have peace through it? We are not being ourselves. It is like, suppose I put this hand of mine into a vice. It's not going to be happy. It's not going to feel proper. It is a free thing. And it should be a free thing. A human being is free when its conceptions is in the skies. I mean, higher thoughts, nobler thoughts, greater thoughts. And the rest, of course, goes on. It's not like I'm thinking the higher, so I'm not having a bath. That's silly, right? I mean, for Loka Sangraha, for the welfare of everybody, please have a bath. Similarly, all other things of life, you do them, of course, but you're rooted in the higher.
That's wonderfully put. The next question would be, when we talk about Vedanta, because it's primarily a path of knowledge, self-knowledge, or knowledge of the ultimate reality. At one point, it does seem very intellectual. So a common question which comes up is, this seems like an abstract philosophy. How is it related to life? Or another form of the question will be that I understand it intellectually, but my life is not changing. I know in your own book, you make this crucial distinction between knowledge and wisdom. So would you like to speak to that?
Yes, great. It's a very important thing for us, all of us here as Vedantans. The knowledge is fascinating. You all have studied it. And so you know how fascinating it is. And it's not, nothing more pleasurable than sitting with a Vedanta book and understanding all these things about life. It feels like, you know, in a dark house, some light has come in. However, light in a dark house is good only if you get up with the help of that light and start doing something. Otherwise, whether you're sitting in a dark room or light room, it makes no difference. Or lit room, it makes no difference, right? All the knowledge of the world will not help until it is converted to action. So we have to learn it and then work with it. Do a karma yoga, do a bhakti yoga, do a jnana yoga. Unless we are willing to work with it is just another feather in our cap. And what are we going to do with all these feathers? Are we going to fly with them? What are we going to do with it? We don't want all these feathers in our cap. What we want is to experience the fulfillment that we are heir to. It's not like we're getting it from anywhere. It's ours. And we just have to, sort of lay claim on it. So when we do not reflect on that knowledge enough, that it converts itself to action, we become like mules with gold, What use is that gold to that mule? It's just a burden. We keep saying, oh, I shouldn't do this. Oh, I shouldn't think that. That doesn't help me. So when I reflect on that knowledge and I convert it, in Vedanta, what we say is 20% reading and 80% thinking. Understand it. When you understand it, you won't do anything else. And you will know you've understood it because you're doing that thing. So conversion of knowledge to wisdom is through the path of reflection. And reflection can be done by sitting. Reflection is also done by just going and doing stuff so you learn stuff.
That's so well put. I'm reminded of Swami Vivekananda, whose famous definition of religion as the manifestation of the divinity within us. As we go through life and we study and we live life, we begin to realize the profound depths of that definition. It's not just the knowledge of our divinity, it's not the knowledge of the ultimate nature of things, but also the manifestation of it in our, not only in our thinking, but in our words, in our actions primarily. Like Vivekananda said, how to make it manifest in every movement of life. I think that is what you are telling us by using the term wisdom, that quite distinct from knowledge per se. Moving on. Oh, not moving on. I was also, when you were speaking, I was reminded of Adi Shankaracharya. Recently we were reading the Mundaka Upanishad, and where it says that this Atman is not realized by Balahinena, the one devoid of strength. And then Shankaracharya comments on that, devoid of strength. He comments on that. He says that Atma Jnana Nishtha, that means this dedication to the knowledge of the Atman, living, basing your life on the knowledge of the Atman, living from that knowledge. And that's very interesting. And that's well before, enlightenment or Jivan Mukti or whatever. In the course of our reading and study and living, uh, try to manifest the knowledge already gained. Another sadhu told me, very interesting, very colloquial Hindi. He said, "Prapt gyan ka adar kijiye." The knowledge we already know lots of things. Prapt gyan means the knowledge already acquired. So he says, give importance to the, give reverence to the knowledge already acquired, instead of just shelving it away and reading more books, adding more lectures and books to our living on the basis of that knowledge. But now moving on, another area which you touch upon in the book is the importance of selflessness, of unselfishness. The question seems to be whether we put it this way or not. When you put it out like that, it sounds bad, but it's somewhere in our minds that if I do things for I, me, myself, I should be happy, right? And if it's the opposite, my time, my precious resources, my money, if I pour it out for others and others who are not even related to me, from whom I cannot expect something in return, the very core of altruism, selflessness, how will that make me happy? So selfishness should make me happy, right? And selflessness seems to be foolish. What would you say to that?
Well, first is, of course, go and try. If you think it has selfishness will make you happy, then please go try it and see what happens. Or if you think that unselfishness makes you happy, then go try that and see what happens. Because there's nothing like real life experimentation. But if you want to go through this through logic, then let's go back to our cause and effect relationship. Number one, all desire, all happiness comes from absence of desire. Because what is happiness? And happiness is synonymous with satisfaction, enjoyment, sukha, ananda. We're using it all in one sense. I mean, we're not making any kind of difference between the different types of happiness, as it were, just one happiness. Right? So, what is happiness? Happiness is cessation of desire, cessation of agitations, by definition. Happiness is equal to cessation of agitations. Where do all agitations come from? All agitations come from desire. What is selfishness? Selfishness is the multiplicity of desire. So by logic itself, you'll know that nothing selfish is going to give you happiness. Because the more you think of yourself, the more the desires are inflamed and the more you're running away from the thing that you want, which is happiness.
Mm.
But when you subjugate your own self to something nobler, something greater, something bigger in life, you are letting those desires subside. You are painfully saying, okay, this is not about me, this is about that. And you find also that there are people who do work for a higher cause, but they start making it about themselves.
Mm.
And when they start making it about themselves, again, the pleasure is gone. They are as agitated as any corporate executive. So then that's no use, right? So that ability to put the cause above ourselves is what causes reduction in desires. And therefore, by definition, you have to be happy. Only because, we have to keep this practical, there is a little caveat that each one of us are at a certain level. When we do something unselfish, we should do slight pain, not too much pain. It's like going to the gym. If you want to build your muscles, you have to lift weights. If you lift what you can comfortably do, you won't build it. If you lift too much, you'll damage it. Just a little more than what you can do. And then keep raising that slowly, slowly. That's why sometimes people feel very frustrated being unselfish. They said, I did my duty to my mother-in-law, but I'm so miserable and this and that. You overstepped. Do what you can. Take on the discomfort that you can comfortably take. Don't take on discomfortable discomfort. That won't work. So if we do it correctly, our joy, our confidence, our productivity will just grow by leaps and bounds. But you can't jump this. You can't become Christ overnight, right? You have to go step by step by step.
Right, that's so well put. The close logical connection between um, selfishness and the multiplication of desires leading to more agitation, leading to unhappiness. So it's tightly linked there, and we see where we are making a mistake by thinking by doing everything for myself. This is selfishness. I'll just I'll be happy, but the problem is I'll multiply desires, and then I'll multiply agitations, and then I'll just end up being more unhappy. It reminds me of what Vivekananda said. He said, unselfishness is more pain, but one needs some maturity to understand that. That in the long run, unselfishness is actually more, makes you happier, actually. Um, and you have also given us the clue to how unselfishness works. I think what you just said, paraphrasing you, you said that when we hook ourselves to our desires, we hook ourselves to small things and make ourselves smaller and smaller. When we hook ourselves to something higher, a greater cause, then we are actually expanding the self, going closer to our real nature. And lo and behold, that makes us happy. I'm reminded of Vivekananda, the two statements. One, he says that a test of truth is that which is unselfish or selfless, that is true. That which makes you more selfish or more self-oriented, that is untrue. And he said, expansion is life and contraction is death. You put these two together, that, as you said, the solution is to expand. And how do you expand? You hook on to something larger, not smaller. Um, one, actually, I have some other questions, but time is a factor. Let me see, one more question. Um, the practical aspect of Vedanta, there is one crucial turning point in the book where you discuss the importance of the intellect and the role of the mind. The mind and the intellect, this is sort of pivotal. It's like a fulcrum on which your Vedantic progress or practice depends. Can you speak to that? What is the intellect? What is the mind? What role does it play, and how should we use them?
The mind is the manas in Sanskrit. The English word is slightly larger than the word manas. Manas, man in Hindi, refers to our emotions, our likes and dislikes, our whims and fancies, love, anger, greed, hate. All of this comes in your mind. All this irrational side, our emotions, our whims and fancies, our impulses. I feel like doing this, I don't feel like doing this. All of that is our manas, mind or man. The intellect is buddhi, which is your viveka, your capacity of discrimination, reason, judgment, analysis. All of this is the buddhi. Now, the critical thing in life is that when we take an action, any action, this action has to come from the buddhi, never from the mind. Never. Not a single time. Always from your viveka, your buddhi, your intellect. Now, when we go on functioning like this, we attain both material as well as spiritual progress. How do we attain material progress? Simple thing. Your spouse says something irritating to you. Your mind will say, how dare you speak to me like that? Do you think I'm your servant? How do you talk to me like that? I don't want to live with you anymore. I'm going to go to the lawyer and get my divorce papers. Mind is taken off. Intellect says, hold on a second. My spouse is a little hot-tempered. That is her only flaw. I have got 5 flaws. She's putting up with my 5 flaws. I'll put up with one of hers. The intellect is able to look at that situation beyond the immediate. People do behave badly sometimes. Well, sometimes you take it in your stride. And sometimes you don't. But how do you know? Your discrimination has to tell you. You have to know when this is something or this is unpleasant, I'll gulp and bear it. Or this is not acceptable. Like suppose, you have a spouse who beats you up, then this is not acceptable. You walk out. But if your wife, if your spouse says, I told you get me a glass of water, you didn't get me a glass of water, just put up. It's not worth the trouble. So, I mean, depends, of course, on the story. Or when you go to work, you have to think carefully what your step is going to be. When you go to a negotiation, you have to think carefully. You cannot afford to go to the world with your heart all open and everybody coming and trampling all over it. It needs a little filtration. So when we apply our buddhi in the world, we become prosperous, fulfilled, successful, have good relationships, good health. Why do we not have good health? Because our mind has rushed into the food before our intellect has a chance to see what I'm eating. Mind sees a cheesecake and has eaten it before the buddhi has realized that I'm eating a cheesecake. So whether any aspect of life, buddhi has to lead the action, not the mind. That doesn't mean that we suppress the mind. It's just like a child. You give in to few things, you don't give in to few things. But you think about which ones you're going to give into. So when we do this materially, we become materially well off. When we do this spiritually, we grow spiritually. Sometimes our mind gets involved in our spiritual pursuit. We love the karma yoga, the service to the community. We love the bhakti yoga, the bhajans and the temples, and all of it is so beautiful. And of course, we love the studies. So for the mind, this becomes an entertainment. It loves it and it does it. This interferes with our spiritual growth. That is what the Ishavasya Upanishad warns us about. It says, those who revel in avidya, in ignorance, in worldly pursuits, they are in blinding darkness. Those who revel in vidya, that means spiritual life, they are in greater darkness. So we are no longer using these as a tool for growth. We just enjoy it and we are indulging it. This makes us stagnate spiritually. So it is critical in life, whether you're looking at it from a material point of view or a spiritual point of view, which by the way, Vedanta never does. It says, if it's right, it's right, and if it's wrong, it's wrong. And if it's right, you'll get everything, and if it's wrong, you'll get maybe one or two things. So if you're doing it correctly, that means you use your buddhi, your viveka, your discrimination, your intellect before each and every action in life, then you will do well. Otherwise, something somewhere is going to go wrong. And it's especially important in spiritual life, like what we just discussed, right? Even when you're being unselfish, you must know how much and no more is correct for me. When you're doing bhakti yoga, you know what you're doing. When you're doing karma yoga, you know what you're doing. Of course, when you're doing jnana yoga, you know, you're clear what you're doing. So it's critical.
Right. I mean, I was just thinking about bhakti yoga. We all know people who seem very religious, sort of hyper religious. Their puja rooms are full of deities, their days are full of this ritual and that ritual, and they seem quite harassed and tense. And the joy, the beauty, and the peace and the psychological strength which should come from bhakti is nowhere there. So it's more like a mental weakness rather than something that is strengthening your mind. I will step back now. If you want to know more about the book, this we just had a little bit of a trailer. What she just told us, the book is full of great insights and great advice, and very practical too, and yet entirely rooted in Vedantic traditions. Questions which are already there. Let me take up a few. I'm going to summarize. I won't read out the whole thing, and then we'll put it to Jankiji. Saptak Das says, first I pay my humble pranams to Revered Maharaj and humble gratitude to Dr. Janki Santoke. And then he gives some details about his visit to the Indian Institute of Science Education Research in Kolkata, where he sees in neuroscience lab. electroencephalogram, electrical activity of the brain, and so on and so forth. In deep sleep or in deep meditation, the brain state, what it is, the question is, in that state of the brain, does consciousness still remain? Is there consciousness? If the brain is in a particular state, we see some kind of particular electrical activity in the brain associated with deep sleep. Is there consciousness or not? That's one. A wider, more philosophical question from the same person is, according to Sankhya philosophy, Purusha is transcendental self, a pure consciousness, and Prakriti is nature. They're parallel and different at first. When they start to interact, this universe is created. Does that mean that the universe is conscious according to Sankhya? All right, I think sort of related to each other. So two questions: brain in a particular state, is there consciousness? And second, is the universe conscious according to Sankhya?
Okay. Firstly, do you have consciousness in deep sleep? Yes, you do. It is like in the labs, when you switch off the flame, that little flame still there, so that when you come on again, you can just turn it back on. So yes, consciousness is very much there, even in deep sleep. And how can you establish that it is there? From the fact that you come back to your waking state and say, I slept so well, I had deep sleep. If you had no consciousness there, how could you even say that you had deep sleep? So yes, consciousness is there. Consciousness is always there. It's always available as long as there's a mind and intellect. Consciousness, as in the way we understand the term, is always there. Now, is the universe conscious? By the way, we are not doing Sankhya, we're doing Vedanta. So if we are talking about the universe as being conscious, now we'll have to start going back to definitions. What do we mean by conscious? Consciousness is awareness or knowledge or thoughts. So if I ask you, do you know, or are you aware, or are you conscious? So you will definitely ask me, do I know what, or am I aware of what? So the consciousness as we know it is always consciousness of something. You are conscious that currently there is this online conversation on. You may be conscious of the temperature around you. You're always conscious of something. This consciousness is referred to as conditioned consciousness, where there's always an off. When there is consciousness without the off, not conscious of anything, simply conscious, and this is known as pure consciousness. Now you and I and nobody understands what this means, because we've not experienced what is consciousness without the off. That is the state of a self-realized person. Pure consciousness is God or the self or Atman, however you have studied it. It pervades the universe at all times. So does the universe have consciousness? As an inanimate universe have consciousness? Of course it does, because consciousness or God or transcendental reality, whatever you want to call it, is all pervading. So it's always there at all times. Conditioned consciousness is not available with the inanimate. You have to be animate to have conditioned consciousness, because conditioned consciousness is thoughts. So if you're referring to the universe having pure consciousness, the answer is yes. If you're referring to it as having conditioned consciousness, the answer would be no.
Thank you, Jankiji. Moving on to questions by Anirban C. So he has got three questions as far as I can see. They are: the path of Jnana Yoga looks binary, either I know or I don't know. Question one: how can one say one is progressing in this journey?
So firstly, is Jnana Yoga binary? Yes, because as long as there's an intellect, it will have to be binary. If there is no binary, the intellect has no role to play. because the fundamental role of the intellect is the distinction between two things: black and white, tall and short, good and bad, whatever, sensible, not sensible. Intellect means binary. There is no intellect without binary. So how do you progress? Progress means that your comprehension of binaries has changed. Okay, so when you are not a developed soul, there is I and you. Right? That's it. There's me, who's important, obviously, and you, who's unimportant. So that's your original binary. Then as you grow, it becomes my family and I, we are one. And the binary is everything outside that. As you grow further, it may become your community. And the two is anything outside that circle. Then may become your country, may become humanity. So you're always seeing binary, but your comprehension of that binary is now changing. So as a realized soul, you have no binary because the whole world is your own self. So that's when you have transcended the intellect. But up to that point, you have to make these binaries change they change. Growth means the change of binaries, the recognition of larger and larger circles of identification. That is with reference to people. But the same thing happens with reference to knowledge or art or any such thing, where your comprehensions of each level will change. Most fundamental, like take science, Newton's 3 laws, and their binary is what is outside the purview of that. And then Einstein's is E is equal to mc squared. So as your principles go higher, your conception of the binaries change.
About the next one was, is samadhi experience or mystical experience the only way to attain this knowledge that we are Brahman?
Yes, samadhi is the only way. Samadhi means self-realization, means that you have attained this knowledge. So it's like a switch. It's on or off. Either you think you are Anirban or you think you are the self. So it's one or the other. So it's a switch that's on and off. However, your conception of Anirban can keep on increasing gradually until it becomes universal, becomes the self, just like we just spoke about. So that light on and off is one thing. But it's almost like you're in a dark room and you're walking towards the switch. And the closer you go to the switch, the closer you are to that final understanding. So there is a difference between us, but we are all in darkness. So you can look at it either way. Either you can say we are all in darkness, or you could say some of us are closer to the switch than others.
Then he asks, Keno Upanishad says, Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate. That would translate into, in every experience we are experiencing that ultimate reality, and then only we attain to immortality. Now his question is, how can this be a living reality for the common man? What are the most common experiences in daily life?
It can't be. How can it be a common experience for the common man? It's like saying, how can Wimbledon Championship be an experience for the common man? It can't be. Why are we trying to make it like as if it is a common experience? It is not. It will come with a lot of work, a lot of dedication. Balena, na pravachanenya labhyaha, is not going to be caught by pravachan, bahuna shrutena, by listening to a lot. It's not coming like that. It's the greatest, biggest, most wonderful thing you can do. Common man who is not even willing to work hard for his health or his wealth, not happening. Not because we are saying so and we are some kind of elitist who says who is going to realize or not. It's just the law of life. Achievers will always be few. Wimbledon champion is going to be one, right? Every year you'll have one. A person of realization, in many generations we'll have one. And we are blessed that we are just in touch with this knowledge, and so we have the potential of actually taking a step forward. And for every step we take forward, we are blessed and the world will be blessed because of it.
And that's beautifully put. I mean, yes, it is open to all of us, but only in the long run, ultimately. And it's not an all or nothing thing. As we move towards it, we gain and everybody else gains also. Yes, that's wonderfully put. V. Srinivas Raju says, he asks, what is the difference between happiness and ananda oblique bliss?
As we are defining it, no difference. Same. Because, it sounds strange because everyone in the class would definitely say, this doesn't make sense. How can you say it's the same? How can you say it's the same joy whether I eat ice cream or whether I have a child? How can you say it's the same joy? It's not, and we experience it differently. But in Vedanta, what are we saying? We're saying it's all the same thing. It's only one thing. So it just doesn't seem right to us because it's not fitting our experience. So let's see how we can see how this fits our experience. Think about it. What is happiness? Absence of desire. So what has actually happened? I had a desire. It was agitating my mind. And then I got the object. The agitation fell. Now think about this carefully. What is happiness is absence of agitation. What is your experience of happiness is a matter of contrast. If your agitation was extremely high and it fell quickly and immediately, you'd experience a certain, exhilaration or something. If your agitation was just slightly and then it fell a little, then you don't experience it that much. It's like, suppose you go into a go down which is horrible and dirty and then you clean it up and people will come in and say, oh wow, how clean it is. Suppose you always maintain it like that and they always seen it like that. Then every time they come in, they're not going to feel, oh, what a clean place. This will become normal life for them. So as you grow, you don't experience these big ups and downs because just being happy is your normal life. So the experience of happiness is a matter of contrast. Just like it looks clean if it was much dirtier before. But if it's always clean, you don't seem to think much of it. So that's why spiritually grown people are just always happy. They don't have these ups and downs. I'm so happy, I'm so miserable. All this story doesn't go on in their life. You're okay. They're always happy. You say, did you enjoy this a lot? And they'll say, yeah, it was nice. But didn't you enjoy it? We loved it. Yeah, it was nice. You see, the contrast is not so much. But that doesn't mean they're not happy. They're happier than us because it's a constant lack of agitation.
Yes. Somewhat related are these two questions. Shudipta is asking, how do you turn off expectations, being human beings amongst all the stress of life? So how do you turn off expectations? And Rajani is asking, how do you sublimate desires?
So how do you turn off expectations? There's no way you can do that. Don't even attempt it. But what you can do is learn to have correct expectations. When we expect incorrectly, when we do not assess something properly, we don't use our head at all, we don't assess it, then we start having a wrong expectation from that thing, and then we meet with disappointment. Right? So when we are disappointed, what should be our understanding? Our understanding should be, what is our current understanding? He is so bad, he doesn't know. Our understanding should be, my assessment was incorrect. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, the fish is going to fail. So it's very, very important that we assess properly. Let us say I have a staff member, a driver, who is always late. Okay, he's never come on time. I can get into a quarrel with him every morning, or alternatively, I know the guy is never on time. When I have an important meeting to go to and I want him at 10 o'clock, I tell him to come at 9 o'clock. Then he is comfortable and I am comfortable. And if it's a very important meeting, then I tell him, you please stay here overnight. But this way, my expectation is aligned to correct assessment, and I'm not disappointed. If I expect the summer to be cold or the winter to be hot, of course I'm going to be disappointed. So we must assess and base our expectations on that assessment. This is a hot-tempered person. If I speak to him, I expect him to lose his temper. This is a punctual person. If I give him 10 o'clock, then he will be there at 2 minutes to 10. Assessment should precede expectations. We can't get rid of expectations, but we can make our assessment the base of those expectations. Okay. And second
Right.
one was?
How to sublimate desires. I think you have covered this earlier also. Yes, to
Yes.
take it to something higher and greater. Um, the next question is interesting because it's something that we keep getting. Sharmili Patel says, what do you do when people in your life, family, friends, etc., are not interested in Vedanta and understanding the true cause and effect relationship of happiness? Rather, they are content continuing to chase daily pleasures in day to day life and find the Vedantic path boring or dry and feel that I am drifting away from them as a result. We get variations of this question often. So, how would you respond to that?
Remember at one point, I was not interested in Vedanta either. Okay, maybe this life, maybe another life, but I was not interested. And nobody at that time could have made me get interested. No Krishna, no Christ, no Muhammad, nobody can make a person get interested in the subject. And if they had that ability, why didn't they convert everybody at that time? They couldn't. So what hopes do I have? If in fact I should be blessed if people around me are not interested in Vedanta, because it is a great advantage to us. You know what is the great advantage to us? We love Vedanta. We cannot reason properly. But when people keep arguing with us, then it occurs to us, oh, I didn't think of this point. I have absolutely enjoyed being with people who disliked Vedanta, who argued it, because what all they said made me reflect on those ideas and maybe understand my subject better. So very grateful for all the people who said I was doing wrong, that this is wrong for this reason, it's wrong for that reason. Very grateful to them because it gave me a chance to look at it again and make sure that I am understanding this. Otherwise, sometimes I get carried away. So very grateful to them. And the other great advantage of it is if you want to study Vedanta, you must get up early in the morning and study. And everybody else is asleep, so nobody's disturbing you. So that's superb too.
Yeah. Another question or an observation. Nina asks, somehow happiness has never been an issue for me, perhaps because I genuinely live in the present. Your thoughts, please?
I don't know what to say to that. I mean, when there's no issue, what is there to say?
Yes. Yeah, we always notice that Vedanta starts with a question. As long
Yeah.
as you don't have a question, Vedanta is never thrust upon you. You must come up with, so what's your issue? So why are you here, for example? There must be something that you're seeking. Yes. You might say that I'm fine, but I want to know the ultimate reality, or I want to know who am I? I want to know the meaning of it all. Good, then that's your quest. Marcel Kramer says, what do you consider the root desire starting from the premises that when you enter the world, you have no experience here yet. There would be no desire without knowing what exists, right? Mm.
Yeah, Marcel, I'm not sure um, how much you have studied the subject and whether you have followed the logic for reincarnation. But if you do accept the idea that you are a reincarnated being, if you accept this idea, then you are born with desires. If you do not accept this idea, then you will have to tell us how you explain the fact that two children born to the same parents um, and brought up in exactly the same way can be so different. So Vedanta, I mean, I'm not going to the logic of reincarnation, but the way every one of us is born with desires, or if I put it in a more correct manner, every one of us is born because of our desires. That is the reason we are born. We are born here to exhaust those desires. If you didn't have desires, you would not be born again. You would not, they say you've left the cycle of birth and rebirth. So you don't have um, desires, you won't be born. You're born here to fulfill desires. In fact, the logical way of looking at it is every movement we have made in life is because of desire. You came here because of desire, and you will leave here because of desire. So, birth and death is also a movement, and therefore we attribute it to desire.
Here is a question from Sam M. Isn't happiness binary opposite of sadness? So if you want to be happy, you have to be sad. So don't we have to transcend both?
True. But that's what we were talking about. That this sad, happy, this is this fluctuation of life. I'm sad, I'm happy. And as long as we live in that state, we will be going up and down, up and down, up and down. But as we mature, it goes like this. I mean, instead of going up and down, it's a rising graph. If we keep maturing, of course. In fact, as per Vedanta, none of us have ever experienced happiness. All we have experienced is a reduction of agitations. So let us say that today my agitations are, let's say, 60%. I'm just making up a figure. So I'm at 60% agitation. Now, when something bad happens to me, these agitations go to 70. And let's say somebody went to hospital. I had a terrible time. I was looking after my parents or my spouse in hospital. A terrible, terrible time. And then everything became all right. My wife or my husband came home. The agitations came down back to 60. Now I will say I am happy at 60. The same happiness which I originally had. I will now think this is happy. Again, it goes up to 70. When it comes down, again, I'll call 60 happy. But I will know more happiness only when my 60 goes to 50, which will only come through spiritual growth, through maturity. Now, when I'm at 50, I'll say I'm so happy. Actually, I'm still at 50% agitations. When it comes to 40, again, I'll say I'm so happy. So you see, we don't know until it comes to zero. Zero agitation, which is zero desires, which is self-realization, moksha, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it.
This reminds me of a saying from a famous psychoanalyst, Erich Fromm, which I often quote. He says, what we call happiness, what goes by the name of happiness in our civilization, is just building up tension and releasing it. Now we have another question from Milan Vasilev. What is happening with the realized being according to Advaita Vedanta, after the death of the body? Does only Sat remain as it ever was, or does something remain in Maya so it can manifest or not by its own wish? These are questions. After enlightenment and after death of the physical body.
What happens? Nothing. It is like saying, what happens in the dream world once you wake up?
Hmm.
Nothing.
I remember once somebody asked this question to Swami Bhuteshanandaji, who was the 12th president of our order, and many of us felt he was an enlightened person. So the monks were asking him the question. Remember, he was the president, he was about 95 years old at that time. And we were pestering him with questions. And we see that the enlightened one is walking and talking and eating just like anybody else. And then he said, that's what you see. And then the person who was asking the question said, yes, that's what we want to know. What does he see? What does that enlightened one see? And Bhuteshanji just said rather cryptically, who sees? I think implying thereby, we still think of it as a person, as a body behaving in certain ways, as a mind in there thinking in certain ways. That might be there, but that enlightened one does not at all identify with that person. So the question, exactly as Jankiji said, we are still thinking in terms of the dream world when we ask the question. It's like asking what happens in the dream world when you wake up. Yeah. Girish is asking, is the consciousness existence bliss an experience too? And which faculty do we use to experience it? How do you define knowledge? I think he means spiritual knowledge or Vedantic knowledge.
The self is unknown to us. We do not know what the ultimate truth is. So when the great sages, the enlightened beings, explained it to us, they explained it in terms of what we do know. What we do know is Satchit Anand. Sat means existence, Chit means consciousness, Anand is bliss. Existence refers to the existence of inanimate objects. Chit refers to consciousness, that means the presence of thoughts in living beings, and Ananda is the absence of thoughts in living beings, which is deep sleep. So Sach It Anand means this world. Consciousness or the self is all of it. That is what it's trying to say. So we understand Satchitanand, we understand existence, we understand consciousness, we understand bliss. And so they just say the ultimate of this is that. Because it is always a rule that something unknown is indicated with something known. So therefore, the unknown self is described as this known thing. But of course, the self exists beyond all of this. So basically what they say is the ultimate of Satchitanand.
Prithvish.
Yes, Swamiji. My question was related to the ethics in Advaita Vedanta. That usually the ethics in Advaita Vedanta is based on ontology, ontological basis of ethics, whereas other ethics are teleological and deontological. But I do understand that in ontological ethics, you have the answer to the meta question that why be ethical at all. But in real life, let's say a terrorist has attacked us or terrorist has set up a bomb and I want to interrogate that terrorist, what will that ontological Advaitian do to the terrorist? Will he torture? Because that will come under teleological ethics that one can torture a terrorist to save many lives. Whereas in deontological, we should not torture the terrorist because that is also a human being. So, what is the ontological perspective of that?
We are, when it comes to ethics, it is based, as you say, on the ontological version, which means we are all the self. And what does that really mean in practical terms? It means you and I are one. That means a complete oneness identification with all beings. I would no more want you in pain than I would want myself in pain. Right? So it's a complete oneness with all beings. Just like you have a oneness in your own body, all these different parts, the eye, the hand, the liver, and the kidney, every different part is just you. So that's the base of the ethics. Now, let's say that in my body or in someone's body, there is gangrene in the foot. You feel one with your body, completely one, but there is gangrene. Gangrene will poison and kill the whole body. So the doctors will advise you, and any sensible person will agree, that the foot will need to be chopped off. This is not violence. This is ahimsa, because it is based on the fact that we are preserving the whole. So Vedanta has no rules that you can't do X or Y or Z. It says when it comes to the mind, the love is universal. When it comes to the intellect, the action is appropriate.
Very well put. Yes. So skillful action based on the love in the mind and the knowledge in the intellect. That what you have realized, the oneness, and then that is translated into action. The direct answer to your question would be, I think, be the Bhagavad Gita. After teaching all of Vedanta, what did Krishna recommend? He did not actually say go and fight. At the end, he says, having heard all this clearly, now you do as you please. What follows after this? We will move on to Shama. Would you like to unmute?
Namaste, Dr. Jankiji and Swamiji. My name is Ritwa, and I'm a student as well as a sports person. And so my question is, as a sports person, I have like an inherent need to win matches and to get trophies, as well as I have like high ambitious aims to get good grades and to to get accepted into top universities as well. So you said to like sublimate desires. So how would that work for me?
Which sport are you in?
Badminton.
Okay. And you play representative badminton?
Yeah, so I play for states, which is Karnataka in India right now.
Wonderful. So when you play for the state, play for the state. The more you play for my trophy, the more agitated the mind will become. The less the mind will have, the less the intellect will be able to focus the mind on actually hitting the shuttlecock when it's next to you. Right? So you have to forget about yourself and play for the higher cause. It could be the state, it could be the game itself. You know, and the Lord's thing, they say, play the game. So it could be the sport itself, it could be the state, it could be anything as long as it's not yourself. And so your game will just get better and better. I mean, I know we are short of time. We probably won't take all the questions, but let me tell you this really beautiful story about Tansen and his guru. You know, Tansen, as you know, was one of the Navratnas of Akbar's court. And Akbar is supposed to have asked him that you are the world's best singer. Do you know anyone better than you? He said, of course I know someone better than me. My guru is better than me. So he said, okay, so I'd love to hear your guru. So Tansen said, that's not possible. You can't hear him. He's not going to come to court. So Akbar said, no, okay, you take me wherever he is. I will listen to him. If he's better than you, I must hear this. So then Tansen said, look, he will not sing by royal order, okay? You will have to hear him when he sings. So Akbar said, okay, fine. Where and when? He said, okay, we'll have to go to the forest at 4 o'clock in the morning and he will sing there. And so Akbar said, okay, fine. And then they both went. Akbar was reasonably humble to know that, you know, you can't force the man to sing. So they went in the middle, 4 o'clock in the morning, and they heard him sing. And that was the most beautiful music that Akbar had ever heard. And so it was like 7 o'clock by the time he finished. And they didn't even realize a minute had passed. And so Akbar said, I can't believe this. How is he so good? I mean, you were right. This is, you know, nothing in comparison. And how is that happening? Why didn't you learn from him? So Tansen is supposed to have said, I sing for my king. He sings for his king.
Hmm.
There is no personal motive at all, zero. And so this is what comes out of it. Such a beautiful
Hmm.
expression of your whole potential comes out when you don't exist.
That's a truly beautiful story. I'm reminded of um, hearing some of our monks are accomplished musicians and singers. Vivekananda himself was, so was Sri Ramakrishna. And I remember hearing one of our monastic friends who's a trained classical musician, amazing, wonderful singer. But also, I always remember this one old Swami who has passed away now, who at one time was a very good singer, but of course, he's lost his voice and advanced old age. One day I heard him sing in the temple with the harmonium, no accompaniment, anything. Um, it was so touching, a Mirabai bhajan. This elderly man, whole life he's a sadhaka and a monk, and he's singing. Nobody else was in temple. I don't think he was even aware that I was there in the temple. Only he is there in the picture of Sri Ramakrishna, Ma Sharada, Vivekananda in front of him, and singing his heart out, as it were. Now, that is so elevating and unforgettable. That's something way beyond training and skill. And that's the spiritual. We have time only for one last question, as I said, Vipan Kumar.
Swamiji, Pranam Mataji. Swamiji, I have a question about suffering. Like when I see the world suffering, the animal suffering, people suffering, somehow it creates a hindrance in my mind. I mean, with bhakti, right? So I'm not able to truly devote myself to God and all of that because I see suffering everywhere. I mean, if I get enlightenment, I read scriptures, my suffering might get removed, but the suffering of the world, I mean, even when Krishna came, when Lord Rama came, the immediate people, they might have got rid of their suffering, but the animals suffer, everyone is suffering. Somehow this thought is in the mind that the world is inherently very, I mean, negative or full of, suffering. I mean, how do I get rid of that and develop true bhakti? I mean,
I
not
think
an.
I got your point, Janki ji.
I think he addressed this to you.
All right. Yes, it's a big question. It's called, in religion, it's called the problem of evil. That how do I reconcile the existence of all-powerful, all-loving God, and how do I have bhakti on such a God who is responsible for so much suffering in this world? And one cannot deny that there is tremendous suffering in this world. All right. I'll answer this in the words of Sri Ramakrishna himself. Somebody put this question to him, and he gave the answer at multiple levels. One level was that we do not understand. It is way beyond our understanding. So our faith in an all-loving and just God um, should not hinder, the suffering, the seeing suffering in the world should not hinder our bhakti to God, because we have faith that ultimately God knows much more than us and ultimately protects, creates, protects, and preserves this entire universe, everybody in it. So God is taking care of us. This is a matter of faith. Now, the person to whom he said it was not satisfied, again pressed that there is so much suffering. How can you say this? Then Sri Ramakrishna gave the second level of the answer, which was, he said, well, this is the Leela of God. What can we do? The play of God. And that really annoyed that person who was asking the question. He says, Leela for God, but it is death for us. It's Leela for God, but this is terrible for us. Then finally, the final level of answer which Sri Ramakrishna gave, for which there is no comeback. He said, when the person said, it is Leela for God, but death for us, Sri Ramakrishna said, but who are you? So, if we really know who we are and who all these people, who every being which is suffering, who they truly are, then we will realize they're all one with God, that the non-dual Advaitic truth. And that is an answer, actually, to this question of suffering, an ultimate answer. Now, there are many, many theories which explain why there is suffering, or try to explain. None of them are very satisfactory. I think the answer is that when we see suffering in the world, to the extent that we can deal with it, we can do something to help. First, we must respond in that we actually try to help, instead of devising theories which will explain, reconcile God's existence with suffering. Do what we can to help, and in most cases, we cannot help. It's way beyond us. And so there we pray to the Lord to help those in suffering, genuinely pray to the Lord to ease their suffering, and strive for self-realization. Your enlightenment, it not only puts an end to your suffering, but also shows the way to everybody else also. So yes, this is the answer. I would like to thank very much Janki ji for agreeing to be part of this conversation, and so patiently and wonderfully and in such a relevant way bringing the ideas of Vedanta to bear upon the questions asked by the audience and by me. Also to all of you who are present here for giving us a patient hearing and putting those very enriching questions. Do go out and get a copy of the Happiness Guarantee. Also, thanks to the wonderful technical people in VSNY, in Jankiji's team, who made all this possible. The whole thing will be also up and available online, so you can come back to it again and again. So thank you so much. I'll end with a peace chant. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.